Hey guys, Erlex here from twitch.tv/Erlex. Going to be showing off my heavy Templar Magicka build that I've been running for the past couple of weeks. I've heard a lot of people asking about what I'm using and how I'm doing it, so I wanted to make a nice breakdown video showing, the abilities I use, why I use them, some other abilities I sometimes swap to for different situations, as well as the gearing, enchants, and champion points that I do use. So to start off with the abilities, um, we'll start with my Resto Staff bar, which is bar 1 for me. I start off with Purifying Ritual, and this is um, not only to cleanse all debuffs, especially Dragon Knights with their dots, the new Trebuchet and Ballista fire damage that hits so hard, this will get rid of all of that, as well as also giving us a very decent heal over time as long as we stay within its range. In addition to that, it also will use our focused healing, increasing our healing effects by our Breath of Life that I'll talk about later, while we are within the circle. So it's a great ability to have, and it's also very cheap for the amount of healing and utility it gives. Channeled Focus is next. It also works with our focused healing, but more importantly, it gives us a lot of armor and spell resistance, and even more important than that, it's extremely cheap at 771 Magicka or less if you have the right enchants, and actually restores 480 Magicka every 2 seconds, which is what, in your character sheet, things are rated by 2 seconds. So it's a ton of regeneration. It's something close to 4 different set bonuses worth of regen. It's extremely good. In addition to that, we have Structured Entropy. We use this mostly to get the spell power bonus, 20% increased spell damage. The 8% bonus health is nice when you're really getting beat on and you're just trying to stay alive and you're staying on this bar using your heals and defensive things. So the 8% health actually does come into effect even though it's not on the other bar, because you're actually healing yourself to full and getting bursted back down. This is more of a flex slot here where I swap out the things that I want to use for different situations. Most of the time roaming open world, it's really good to have unstable core because it reflects spells back at casters. So especially the sorcerers that you're seeing running around doing 20, 30, 40k overload light attacks, if you throw this on them at the right time, they throw a light attack and an instant crystal shard, they can actually just kill themselves outright. And in addition to that, also does some damage. It is very expensive, however, so you gotta be very careful when you use it, and it's easy to CC break and give immunity. For our last ability, we use Breath of Life, which is basically our bread and butter. I need healing, stay alive, cast it to heal me, anyone else, doesn't matter. It's extremely good. Heals for plenty, especially when you have a 30% bonus on top of it with 20% more spell power. It's a great ability, and it should be on every Templar's bar. Lastly, we have our ultimate. I switch out this ultimate quite often. When I'm in a group, I'll actually put on the healing ultimate, Remembrance, to, try to keep people alive longer so they can do more damage. I feel like that ult comes in handy more often than an actual offensive ult if you're in a group, but if you're solo, it doesn't help at all. So I actually chose Ice Comet for most situations because it does a ton of damage, as you know, and the 85% slow, if they don't have the stamina to dodge roll out of its effect, I mean, it's just an instant win, guaranteed. It does a ton of damage. On our next bar, which is our Destro bar, this is a Destruction Staff, a Fire Destro Staff, we have Blazing Shield, and this is what we actually use to keep ourselves from dying as well as doing a little extra damage. It's just a great all-around ability. It also synergizes very well with our third ability, which I'll talk about second, Toppling Charge, where we'll actually charge in and stun the target, and if they're casting, set them off balance for a while. The great thing about this combo is a lot of times in PvP you'll end up with a couple of people on you, so someone can actually break your Blazing Shield, or it can just expire after taking a decent amount of damage after you charge someone, giving you an extra little burst of damage while they're stunned. Our second ability is Vampire's Bane. This is used not only for a great single target damage, but also for a movement speed slow, which is extremely useful in a lot of situations, but more importantly than that, it's actually a crit buff, the same as Mage Light, so it's very useful ability. I think this is one of those abilities that every Magicka Templar should have on their bar no matter what. Puncturing Sweep is our fourth ability. This is sort of our bread and butter DPS ability. It's what you hit to kill people. I'll usually, go in from I'll put up a shield, throw a Vampire's Bane, charge in, and Puncturing Sweep. It's a decent little 1, 2, 3, 4 combo that does pretty good damage, has nice defensive capability with this healing you for 40% of the damage done. Also has a small stun / knockback at the end of it, so very solid ability, and it's fairly cheap to spam. Our fifth ability is what many people like to call the Jesus beam. Although I don't quite think it's that good, it is very, very useful and should be on every Templar's bar. The great thing about this ability is you don't have to reach a certain amount of health to start casting it, and it will scale during its duration. So if you start casting on someone who is at 40% health, for example, it will actually tick and then tick for more damage on the next tick because that first damage lowered the percentage more. Or if someone else hits the target and knocks them down the threshold, it'll actually increase in damage. So it actually scales the same damage rate as reverse slash. So it's basically like spamming reverse slash from range. It's really strong. It also ticks instantly as you cast it, so it's great when someone is low health and you need instant damage. It doesn't have a travel time. It doesn't. You don't have to be close to them. That's the best thing about it. You see someone at 10% health at range, you can just touch it and they're dead. There's no channel time, no nothing. They're dead. So that's really one of the strongest things about it. In addition to that, you also cannot block or dodge roll it. So that makes it extremely useful for getting people who are stamina builds, dodge rolling forever, or something like that to, finish them off when you eventually get them low. Our ultimate I chose is actually Empowering Sweep. This is an ultimate you don't see very often, but I think it is extremely strong. I think it's by far the best Templar ultimate. I would like to see it actually be buffed a bit in its damage, but it's still very good in its current state. It is a bit hard to land at times, so you got to watch out for that because its radius is fairly small. But it does do decent damage initially and also tick several times. The most important thing though to me is that usually I'll use this when I've got more than one person on me for around 20% damage reduction immediately. So that's just a great way to stack on top of my heavy armor that I use to really get my damage reduction up there. Now one thing you can actually do here is instead of using the toppling charge and puncturing sweep, it's actually very easy to swap these out for a crushing shock and destructive touch or clinch. Either one is fine. This one has a longer stun, but most people break out of it, so touch may actually be the better one, the longer range. Whereas destructive reach, I believe it's actually called. And the only thing that really changes is instead of charging in and getting people's face, you'll actually just try to stay more at range. Then you'll knock people up and down and use crushing shock as your damage source. And it's about the same DPS. I feel like it's a bit lower, but it is a bit safer because you're able to stay at range. You're able to get people without having to charge in after them, as well as you don't have to worry about bugs like the toppling charge bug, which will actually freeze your character and you can't do anything. So it still works out just as well and does just as much damage. You will want to more often combo a heavy attack into a flame clinch into crushing shock spam when you're doing this setup though. That's the big difference. Next we will look at our abilities, or our items, I'm sorry. Okay, we have our items here, the Engine Guardian Mask and the Engine Guardian Pauldrons. You'll notice I'm using medium and heavy. Now I did choose these even though I know they're very hard to get the ones you want, but these are pretty decent and I had several helmets so I chose these two. The shoulders I went with heavy and the helm I didn't have a heavy so I actually went with medium, but it works out well because it gives me one piece of medium and one piece of light. So my Undaunted skills actually give me some bonus stats based on that. The good thing about this set piece here is that it can actually give you a lot of stamina back or Magicka back when you really need it, and the stamina can be so useful. According to which proc you get, it doesn't matter. There's always some way you can change your strategy based on that, such as instead of needing to heal yourself because it starts healing you, you can do more damage, or instead of needing to heal yourself or dodge roll if you're getting Magicka, you can do something else. So there's a lot of ways you can go about it. Instead of, if you're getting stamina, you can just keep dodge rolling rather than wasting it. There's just a whole lot of ways you can change based on which beam you see on you. Next up I use the Seducer set, and it is all heavy. So I have the gloves, the chest, the legs, the boots, and my two staves are Seducer. And the reason I use this is because I am in heavy armor. I don't get a ton of regeneration or cost reduction or any of the things that light armor actually gives you. And it does, this does give me 8% reduction as well as 2 Magicka recovery bonuses and gives me the extra, close to 1,000 Magicka. Now, you'll notice I did choose Nirnhoned on a few of these pieces, and that's just to get my spell resistance up higher because I feel like a few Nirnhoned is really good. My other pieces I actually use Reinforced to get a little more magic, or a little more resist to spells and physical. My last set, or my next set I should say, is my Sash of Adroitness. These are actually it's a really good set. You can get the belt and the neck for a spell power bonus. It's very solid. Now I do have a spell damage enchant on this, but you really should probably get a cost reduction. That'd be better. I actually need to change that. Then I have the Bands of Cyrodiilites. Now normally these are very expensive for the rank 14, so I actually picked up for very cheap rank 6 versions. And I do lose, around 100 max magicka from each one, and close to 20 spell damage together. But these are a very cheap alternative. You can get them for maybe 20, 30k from the right people each, rather than 80, 90k. So it's a much better price, and I just haven't upgraded yet, but I will eventually get those. So basically, the reason why I'm going with this is I get a couple of spell damage enchants with the ring and the adroitness, and then I get the great regeneration proc here, and more regeneration from my seducer and um, cost reduction. So that's the way in my heavy armor I'm able to cast so much and have so much regen. If we look at my stats here, I actually have 1230 magicka recovery, but don't forget we talked about before that I actually gain another 480 just for standing it within this circle. So you can actually bump that number up quite a bit to have a really, really high magicka recovery. In the videos I'll show at the end of this video, you'll see some fights where my magic recovery is actually very, very solid throughout a long fight, fighting multiple people. In addition to the things I've already spoken about, it's probably worth noting that I do actually pick up, um, where is it? Werewolf. And the reason why I pick up Werewolf is not for any of the abilities, it's actually for the 15% bonus combat regeneration, because I don't want to use Vampire right now because it makes you so much weaker to all the fire damage in the game. But it is very, very useful for the just free extra stamina recovery with no penalty. Let's make sure there's not anything else worth mentioning. One more thing I actually use is the alchemy. I think this is a very important thing to use. Increase potions lasting effects by 30% longer. That's actually much longer than it used to be now. Since they changed potions, they actually have a longer duration. And that is very useful for these potions that now last 45 seconds. So that's actually a lot of extra duration. Now most of the time I do use the tri-health magicka and stamina potions, just because having all of your stats higher is so good when you use dodge, you use heals, you can use the health at any time. It's just great, great buffs. I do also use Pantheas of Detection. You can actually make better ones, but these are, just for catching the Nightblades when they just completely, repeatedly stealth. This is really useful for that kind of situation. Okay, next we'll look at the champion points. We'll start off in the warrior tree, where I actually start off with 10 points in lady. And I guess it is worth noting that I have 123 champion points, so you may not have as many or you may have more. In the lady, this is the one that I try to get 10 points in just because the spell absorption is very, very strong. So in this build I actually put 5 in hardy and 5 in elemental defender. It just makes you a bit harder to kill with magicka damage. I don't feel like these two are very good because I'm not using light armor, and I don't think damage over time effects affect me all that much with the purge basically that I have for very low cost. The Lord is actually where I put most of my points, which doesn't give me very good passives, but you never know when you need to resurrect a little bit faster. Now I actually put most of my points in heavy armor focus, just getting more and more armor out of, because of all the stamina builds do the most damage to me, so I feel like the armor is really where I need the most. I put a couple of points in my damage shields and healing received, just because those points in the first few are so strong that it really seems to help more than just putting a little bit more armor. In the thief tree, I put most of my points in the tower. This is mostly I think all the thieves passives aren't very good in these higher up tiers, so I just kind of put things where I thought they were best. Reduced cost of spells is great since I don't have any light armor. Then I have a few in magicka recovery, just because when you're at these lower numbers you actually get almost twice the value per point. So I feel like it's pretty good to have around this number. I've got 13 and 28, about half. These are the trees I think where you'll gain the most benefit from. I actually put 20 into Elfborn only because Spell Erosion is currently, at least when I'm making this video, bugged, and it actually doesn't do anything. So I'm actually not using that, although I'll probably switch over once that is fixed, although it is still good to know that this is damage and healing where this is only damage, so it's still very, very effective, maybe still better than Spell Erosion. Also put some points in Blessed, increase the healing I initiate, because I feel like that's very, very useful since we do so much healing. We put 7 points into increasing the damage done with Poison Disease and Magic, and this is almost exclusively for my Puncturing Sweep and my Execute. Those are my two biggest damage sources, so magic damage is what I really want more than anything else. It is worth noting that you do want to make sure you get 30 in this tree for the 12% critical rating with Spell Precision. It is extremely important you get that, so that's where your first 30 points have to absolutely go in this tree. Okay, in this first video, you'll actually see me stealthing into a fight where I actually know 3 players are located because I just died to them on my horse. So I'm actually going in for a little bit of revenge. As I'm going in, I actually realize that I don't have a food buff on here, so you'll see right now I'm going to swap to my food buff and go ahead and throw that on. As soon as I get my food buff on, I turn to actually notice that there is a player right there, so I instantly go ahead and start doing a heavy attack. Now, I should have actually swapped to my destruction staff to get that heavy attack burst rather than channeling, but it ended up working out okay since he actually didn't see me until after I had finished the cast. Next, you'll see that I actually throw out my entropy buff to get my spell power bonus going, and then I go ahead and get my rune down to make sure I have that buff and do a charge in. After I charge in, I actually notice the Templar that I want to kill, and after I do a Vampire's Bane and charge on him, I'll actually pop my ult here and go into my burst combo where I'll start doing Abiding Jabs with the Blazing Shield up. As my Blazing Shield expires, you'll see his health actually spikes down, and I go in for the 1-tick execute to go ahead and finish him off. From this point, I throw on my Blazing Shield again, same combo, go in with the charge and jabs. When he's low, do the execute. Now this last guy, you'll see that I get a little bit lower, so I start playing a little bit more defensively, but as soon as I realize that my Dwemer is actually giving me health, I go a lot more offensively with some heavy attacks to get my Magicka up rather than anything else. I throw up my Blazing Shield, end up actually swapping to a potion just in case, pop my ult, pop the Vampire's Bane, do the charge, do the jabs, and then execute out. And there you have it, there's 3 kills. Very, very tanky, but plenty of damage, as you can see, to actually get some kills. This next video, you'll actually see that I'm just running up to a keep where I see someone who's already missing some health, and I decide to just go ahead and try to finish them off. I just throw a Vampire's Bane, a charge, do some execute right off the bat since he already started low, and the blink and finish him off. The next guy comes in, I start doing some damage on him. I can't actually get close enough for a charge and end up getting low myself, so I retreat a bit and try to get some line of sight where I can fight from a better position. You'll notice here, even though I get very, very low in resources, I'm actually able to sustain back up and get all of my buffs down and, turtle up for just a moment to get all my resources back. And this guy's just really laying into me, but it's very hard to kill me in this heavy armor. And all the regeneration you'll see that I'm getting. So I actually line of sight again to get my Magicka up with my channeled focus. He actually ends up getting low from the reflect I had on him, so I go ahead and go into an execute, but with all of his shielding and the Templar nearby, he's actually able to get healed up. So I throw up my Blazing Shield, do some heavy attacks to get Magicka back, through my execute, and decide that I'm actually going to swap to the healer at this point since he's doing so much healing. The execute is still going off, so I'm doing a lot of damage. As soon as I'm able to get this guy low, though, I actually get knocked up, so I have to back off, do another heavy attack, and get my execute off and burst him down. At this point now, I'm just with a Nightblade, so I realize that it's not going to be an easy fight. So with all the stealth and everything, I really have to turtle up a lot here, do lots of healing, and pop all my defensive buffs, try to get in the best position I can to actually start doing some damage on him. Keep doing heavy attacks, keep dropping my channeled focus to keep my regen up. Have to CC break all of his attacks so I can keep on the defensive. Now right about here is when I start going offensive. I don't have much Magicka, but I do know I can burst this guy very quickly. So I end up doing some heavy attacks and then just going in straight to the 29% executes. And given how low his health was, I throw one more heavy attack. He actually made a mistake in not putting more shields on himself and healing, and I'm able to burst him down with just a few more executes. Before I can actually finish teabagging on this guy that tried to 2v1 me because I was in a bit of a bad mood that day, I actually get jumped by another Templar. make pretty short work of him though with a same combo that I've used every other time. Quick and easy damage. And that's one more down. Okay, that's it for the video, guys. Thank you all very much for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below, or you can actually ask me live on www.twitch.tv/ERLEXX. You can find me there about 5 nights a week, live streaming, showing off PvP, PvE, and probably using this build. And make sure that if you want to catch me, you can follow me on Twitch or subscribe.